Most men over 50 have spent decades in conversations with women who were clearly interested in them and missed every signal. Not because the signals were not there, but because nobody ever taught them what to look for. What if I told you that attraction often reveals itself long before a woman says a single word about how she feels? What if some of the moments you dismissed as random habits, nervous gestures, or meaningless movements were actually your clearest clues that a woman felt drawn to you? Today, we're going to explore 8 powerful behaviors that frequently appear when genuine attraction is present. And more importantly, we're going to understand why they happen. Before we begin, I want to ask you something. Have you ever looked back on the conversation years later and suddenly realized, wait, I think she liked me? If that's happened to you, you're certainly not alone. In fact, many men discover much later that opportunities for connection were right in front of them all along. Share your experience in the comments, because I promise there are thousands of men watching who have a similar story. And if you've ever felt confused by mixed signals, uncertain about attraction, or frustrated by trying to understand what women are really communicating, stay with me until the end, because what you're about to learn may completely change how you view social interactions. I'm Mary Smith, host of Senior Mindful Living YouTube channel. One of the biggest misconceptions about attraction is that it begins with conscious decision-making. Most people imagine attraction as a logical process. A woman sees a man, evaluates him, thinks carefully about him, and then decides whether she's interested. But human psychology rarely works that way. Long before conscious thought catches up, the brain is already processing information. Emotional centers begin evaluating safety, familiarity, chemistry, comfort, and curiosity within moments of an interaction. By the time someone consciously thinks, I like this person, their body may have been communicating that message for several minutes. This is why body language fascinates psychologists. While words can be filtered, edited, and carefully chosen, many physical responses happen automatically. They emerge from emotional systems that operate beneath awareness. That doesn't mean every gesture guarantees attraction. Human behavior is far more complex than that. But it does mean that certain patterns appear again and again when genuine interest exists. And that's the key word: patterns. One of the biggest mistakes people make is focusing on a single behavior. A woman touches her hair once, and suddenly someone assumes she's attracted. That's not how accurate observation works. Human behavior is like a puzzle. One piece tells you almost nothing. Several pieces fitting together begin to reveal the picture. Think about the last time you were excited before an important event. Maybe it was a first date. Maybe it was a job interview. Maybe it was seeing someone you hadn't seen in years. Chances are your body reacted before your mind fully processed the moment. Your heart rate changed. Your posture shifted. You felt energy moving through your body. Attraction creates similar responses. When we find someone interesting, our nervous system becomes more alert. We become more aware of our appearance. We become more conscious of how we're being perceived. We unconsciously adjust our behavior because another person suddenly matters. This brings us to the first signal. One of the most commonly observed attraction behaviors is touching or adjusting the hair. Now, many women touch their hair for completely ordinary reasons. Maybe it's windy. Maybe they're fixing their style. Maybe a strand simply falls into their face. Context always matters. But when attraction enters the picture, hair touching often becomes more frequent and more noticeable. Imagine a woman sitting across from a man at dinner. Throughout the evening, she repeatedly smooths her hair, lightly twirls a strand, brushes it away from her face, or tucks it behind her ear while maintaining eye contact. Individually, these actions mean very little. Together, however, they can signal heightened awareness and self-consciousness around someone she finds appealing. Psychologists often describe this as a form of self-soothing combined with self-presentation. Attraction creates excitement. Excitement creates physiological arousal. The body responds by seeking small outlets for that nervous energy. What's fascinating is that many women are completely unaware they're doing it. Years ago, a woman shared a story during a relationship workshop. She described meeting a man at a friend's gathering. Throughout their conversation, she kept playing with her hair. Later, one of her friends teased her about it. She was shocked because she hadn't noticed it herself, yet everyone around her had. That's how unconscious these behaviors can be. The second signal involves the neck. The neck is one of the most vulnerable areas of the human body. Throughout human history, exposing the neck has symbolized trust and relaxation. When people feel threatened, they naturally protect vulnerable areas. When they feel comfortable, those protective behaviors soften. This is why you may occasionally notice a woman lightly touching her neck, adjusting a necklace, brushing hair away from the side of her neck, or drawing attention toward that area while engaged in conversation with someone she likes. Again, context matters. If she's stressed, anxious, or uncomfortable, neck touching may mean something entirely different. But when combined with relaxed posture, warm facial expressions, prolonged eye contact, and genuine engagement, it often reflects emotional openness. Think about it this way. Attraction isn't only about excitement, it's also about comfort. Many men focus entirely on chemistry while overlooking safety. Yet for many women, attraction deepens when both exist simultaneously. The strongest connections are often built when excitement and emotional safety meet in the same interaction. And that's exactly what many of these signals reveal. The third signal is one most men never notice. Pay attention to the wrists and inner arms. The inner wrist is an unusually delicate part of the body. It's soft, exposed, and naturally associated with openness. Throughout social interactions, people who feel comfortable often unconsciously expose vulnerable areas of their bodies. You might notice a woman gesturing with her palms visible. She may rest her wrists in open positions. She may repeatedly touch her forearm while talking to you. None of these actions prove attraction by themselves, but they can become meaningful when they occur alongside other indicators. Imagine two conversations. In the first conversation, a woman gives short answers. Her arms remain crossed. Her body angles away. Her attention constantly drifts elsewhere. In the second conversation, she leans slightly forward. Her palms remain visible. Her body faces you directly. She asks questions. She remembers details. She smiles naturally. The difference is enormous. The most reliable attraction signals rarely come from isolated gestures. They come from overall openness. Now here's something many people overlook. Attraction is not only communicated through the body, it's communicated through attention. Attention is one of the most valuable things a human being can offer another person. When someone consistently focuses on you, remembers what you say, follows your stories closely, and appears genuinely curious about your experiences, that attention often reflects emotional investment. Many men spend years looking for dramatic signs, while missing this quieter but often more meaningful form of interest. A woman who remembers a small detail you mentioned weeks ago may be revealing more attraction than someone displaying obvious flirtatious behavior. Never underestimate the power of attention. Now let's move into a signal that becomes particularly interesting once you understand the psychology behind it. Sometimes attraction reveals itself through objects. This sounds strange at first, but stay with me. Imagine two people sitting across from each other in a cafe. During the conversation, the woman repeatedly moves objects closer to the shared space between them. She touches a glass near his hand. She adjusts items on the table. She unconsciously reduces physical distance using the environment around her. Psychologists sometimes describe this as proximity-seeking behavior. Direct physical contact carries risk. It can feel vulnerable. It can feel too obvious. But reducing distance through objects feels safer. It's almost like the nervous system is testing closeness before consciously committing to it. I remember hearing about a couple who met at a professional networking event. Years later, after they were married, the husband recalled how his wife kept borrowing items from his side of the table during their first conversation. At the time, he thought nothing of it. She later admitted she simply wanted reasons to remain engaged with him. Stories like this happen more often than people realize. Attraction frequently begins through small invitations rather than grand gestures, and that's why observation matters. Not paranoid observation, not overanalyzing, not convincing yourself every smile means romance. Just becoming more aware of human behavior, because awareness changes everything. The man who understands these patterns moves through conversations differently. He becomes less anxious, less confused, less dependent on guesswork. Instead of wondering endlessly whether someone likes him, he begins paying attention to the overall picture. And what you'll discover is that attraction often leaves clues everywhere. The next signal may be one of the oldest attraction behaviors in human history, and it appears across cultures, generations, and social backgrounds. It's called self-grooming behavior. We'll explore exactly what that looks like, why it happens, and what it can reveal about genuine interest in the next part. Self-grooming behavior is one of the most fascinating attraction signals because it appears across cultures, age groups, and social environments. Whether someone is 25 or 65, the basic psychology remains remarkably similar. When a woman becomes interested in someone, she often becomes more aware of how she appears in that person's presence. Without even realizing it, she may straighten her clothing, adjust a bracelet, smooth her blouse, check her posture, fix a necklace, or make small corrections to her appearance. These actions are usually subtle. In fact, they're often so automatic that the person performing them has no conscious awareness they're happening. Think about the last time you met someone who made a strong impression on you. Maybe you checked your shirt, maybe you adjusted your watch, maybe you stood a little taller. Human beings naturally become more attentive to their appearance when someone important enters their awareness. That's why timing matters. If these behaviors increase when you approach, when you begin speaking, or when the conversation becomes more personal, they can carry much more meaning than if they occur randomly throughout the day. One gentleman once shared a story after attending a community event. He noticed a woman repeatedly adjusting her necklace whenever they spoke. At first, he assumed she was simply nervous. Later, after they began dating, she admitted she always became self-conscious around him because she found him attractive from the very beginning. The behavior wasn't planned. It wasn't a strategy. It was simply her nervous system responding to someone who mattered. The sixth signal involves the lips. Now, before we discuss this one, it's important to stay grounded. Many people touch their lips for ordinary reasons. Dry air, habit, stress, concentration, and countless other factors can produce similar behaviors. What makes lip-related gestures meaningful is the context surrounding them. When attraction is present, some women may lightly touch their lips, trace them absent-mindedly, or draw subtle attention toward them during moments of emotional connection. Why does this happen? Because the lips play an enormous role in human communication. They help express emotion, attraction, affection, curiosity, and interest. The brain naturally dedicates significant attention to this area during social interactions. What's especially interesting is that attraction often increases overall self-awareness. A woman may become more conscious of her facial expressions, her smile, her eye contact, and yes, her lips. But once again, the key is not a single gesture. The key is whether that gesture appears alongside other indicators of comfort, engagement, openness, and interest. This brings us to one of the most powerful concepts in all of relationship psychology. Attraction is rarely loud. Hollywood teaches us to expect dramatic declarations, overwhelming chemistry, and obvious signs. Real life is often much quieter. Real attraction frequently reveals itself through consistency. Someone finds reasons to continue conversations. Someone remembers details. Someone asks follow-up questions. Someone lights up when they see you. Someone creates opportunities to spend time together. These behaviors often matter far more than the dramatic signals people spend their lives searching for. Now let's move to signal number 7. One of the more intriguing behaviors psychologists have observed involves what we might call mirroring touch. Human beings naturally mirror people they feel connected to. You've probably seen this happen without realizing it. Two people sitting together gradually adopt similar postures. One crosses their legs and the other does the same. One leans forward and the other follows. One smiles and the other begins smiling more. This phenomenon has been studied extensively because it reflects rapport, connection, and emotional synchronization. When attraction enters the picture, mirroring can become even more pronounced. A woman may unconsciously touch areas of her body while focusing intensely on someone she feels drawn toward. She may mirror gestures, movements, or rhythms occurring within the interaction. The important thing isn't the specific movement. The important thing is the synchronization. Attraction often creates a feeling of alignment. Two people begin operating on the same emotional wavelength. Conversation flows naturally. Silences feel comfortable rather than awkward. Laughter becomes easier. Energy feels shared rather than forced. This is one reason many relationship experts encourage people to pay attention not only to what someone does, but also to how an interaction feels overall. Sometimes the strongest attraction signal isn't a gesture at all. It's the effortless rhythm that develops between two people. Now let's talk about one of the most overlooked signals of all, the feet. Most people spend enormous amounts of time analyzing facial expressions while completely ignoring the feet. Ironically, feet can be remarkably honest. Why? Because most people consciously manage their face. They manage their smile. They manage their words. They manage their posture. But very few people consciously manage the direction of their feet. This means the feet often reveal where attention naturally wants to go. When a woman is engaged, interested, and emotionally invested in an interaction, Her feet frequently orient toward the person holding her attention. Likewise, when someone is looking for an exit, losing interest, or mentally disengaging, their feet often begin pointing elsewhere before the rest of the body follows. You can observe this almost anywhere: restaurants, family gatherings, business events, social clubs, coffee shops. Watch where people naturally orient themselves when they're genuinely enjoying someone's company. The pattern becomes surprisingly obvious once you start noticing it. Another interesting behavior involves subtle foot or ankle movements. Some people lightly swing a shoe, rotate an ankle, or shift their feet while experiencing emotional excitement. Again, these actions don't automatically indicate attraction, but combined with multiple other signals, they can become part of a larger pattern. And now we've arrived at the most important part of today's conversation: the reading framework. Because knowledge of signals means very little if you don't know how to interpret them properly. The first principle is the cluster principle. Never build conclusions from one behavior. One smile means almost nothing. One hair adjustment means almost nothing. One moment of eye contact means almost nothing. But when multiple signals consistently appear together, the picture becomes much clearer. Imagine meeting someone who maintains eye contact, remembers details about your life, leans toward you during conversation, smiles frequently, adjusts her appearance when speaking with you, and actively creates opportunities to continue interacting. That's a cluster. And clusters are far more meaningful than isolated moments. The second principle is the context principle. Context changes everything. A behavior only becomes useful when you understand the environment surrounding it. For example, a woman who is naturally warm and friendly may smile at everyone. That smile alone tells you very little. But if she consistently treats you differently than everyone else, now you're seeing something potentially significant. Does she engage longer with you? Does she remember more about your life? Does her energy change when you arrive? Does she seek your attention in group settings? Those questions reveal far more than any single gesture ever could. This is why emotionally intelligent people become better at relationships. They stop hunting for magical signs. Instead, they learn to observe patterns. They learn patience. They learn presence. And that brings us to what I believe is the greatest advantage many men over 50 possess: presence. Younger men often spend enormous amounts of mental energy worrying. How do I look? What should I say? Am I impressive enough? What happens next? That constant internal dialogue makes observation difficult. But many men discover something beautiful as they grow older. The need to perform begins fading. The pressure softens. The urgency decreases. And in its place comes something far more valuable: the ability to genuinely pay attention, the ability to listen, the ability to observe, the ability to notice. When you're fully present, attraction becomes easier to recognize because you're no longer trapped inside your own thoughts. You're actually seeing the person in front of you. You're noticing her energy. You're noticing her comfort level. You're noticing whether she becomes more engaged or more distant. You're noticing the signals that were always there. And perhaps that's the biggest lesson of all. This conversation isn't really about decoding women. It's about becoming more attentive, more aware, more emotionally intelligent. The men who build the strongest relationships aren't necessarily the most attractive, the wealthiest, or the most charismatic. They're often the men who truly pay attention, the men who listen carefully, the men who notice what others miss, the men who create environments where people feel safe, seen, and understood. Because genuine attraction grows most naturally in those environments. Before we finish, let me leave you with one final thought. If a woman is interested in you, her behavior will usually become easier to understand over time, not harder. Interest tends to create consistency, effort, engagement, curiosity, connection. Confusion often comes from trying to analyze isolated moments instead of observing overall patterns. So remember the framework. Look for clusters, not single signals. Look for context, not assumptions. Look for consistency, not coincidences. And most importantly, stay present enough to actually see what's happening. The signals may be subtle, but they are often far more visible than most people realize. If today's conversation gave you a new perspective on attraction and relationships, take a moment to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear which of these signals you've noticed in real life, and whether any of them helped you understand past experiences differently. And if you know someone who could benefit from this discussion, share this video with them. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss future conversations about relationships, attraction, confidence, and emotional connection. The signals were always there. Now you have a better map for understanding them. And sometimes, having the right map changes everything.